All right, well, I'll kick this off right now. I have the pleasure of introducing one of our guests and collabs, Grant Botma. Most people who are watching and listening probably know who he is. I am starting to tremble, actually, about to announce him. But Grant is a lot of things, but he is a great husband. He is a father of 3 amazing kids. He is the owner of Stewardship, which is not only has an insurance arm, but a mortgage arm, a financial services arm. He is also a well-known speaker, author, and online course creator. He lives in Arizona, has been in the insurance industry for over a decade, and brings amazing energy, passion, enthusiasm to the industry. Everyone that knows him and hears him always leaves feeling uplifted. And I'm super pumped and privileged to introduce him to the crew.
Thanks, Matt. Now I have to try to follow that up, but I'm going to do my best to introduce you. We have a commonality. We have sons named Parker. And congratulations to you and your family on the birth of your son. What an amazing thing. Yes, everybody who's listening knows who Matt is as well, because he works hard to make an impact on the insurance community. It is often that you go to an insurance event and maybe you'll hear him from stage, but at the very least, you will see him in the hallway shaking people's hands, encouraging people, giving people outstanding advice. He is one of the people who are trumpeting the insurance agency channel and working hard to help all of us. He and Zack are the owners of GNN, and they are making waves, not only previously, but are making waves in the future with a lot of different changes and things that are coming. I'm excited to learn from Matt as that stuff goes. He is also the founder of Bobble On with Zack. That is one of the more popular podcasts in our industry that always brings a lot of value. And on a personal note, he's a really great Instagram follow. So make sure you follow him on Instagram because he's a lot of fun. So I'm excited to be on the show with you, Matt.
Thanks, Grant.
Sweet. I have the pleasure of introducing the only person in this collab that has a "the" in front of their name. I get to introduce the Ryan Hanley, who we all know and love. And I think a couple things that I would think about if I was Ryan Hanley, the Ryan Hanley, what I'd be grateful for. Part one is he was an OG in the industry and really kind of inspired a lot of us to be a little bit more vulnerable, be out there with video, be out there with audio, be out there with written, be out there with anything that you want to do. But part two actually had the guts to leave the industry, try something that was pulling him, and then come back to the industry because it was pulling him back. I think that takes a lot of courage. I think that it's really just an honor to work with someone who doubles down on themselves regardless of what's going on. So I get to introduce Ryan Hanley. Ryan, pumped to be along the journey with you.
Wow. Thank you. That was way too kind and way more professional than the job that I was going to do introducing you. No. So I'll tell you, having kind of finishing this up and introducing Zack, what has always drawn me to him is I think how introspective Zack is. I think that it's very easy to be surfacey in life. It's very easy to kind of gloss on the, just kind of the surfacey stuff. And I think what Zack and I connected on very early on was the books that we read, the way that we think about business. I tend to be very scattered, and I've used Zack as a sounding board for focusing my own thoughts on work, on life, watching him with his kids and managing that relationship, watching him in both his partnership with his wife and his partnership with his work wife, who is also on this call. To me, I think that it takes a special kind of person to manage all those relationships, still have a successful business, and still be a good person. I think it's very easy to have your head get bigger than who you are, and I've never. I think Zack has stayed very grounded through all that, and it's just been an absolute pleasure to get to know him, and someone who's, I'll say balance, even though I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think balance is 50-50, but I think the balance that he keeps is something to aspire to, and that's my pleasure to be here.
Love it.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, guys, so I think it's important before we dive in just to kind of touch on the what and the why. And first off, I want the four of us collectively to thank Nick Ayers and Dave Jackson for putting on IAOA's Innovation Conference this year, because if it wasn't for that conference, which the four of us attended in San Diego, we wouldn't have met together through Zach's brain share fireside chat, and then chatted afterwards and said, you know what, let's get together on a more regular basis and collaborate. We have a lot of different perspectives to share with the industry. We have a lot of different experiences to share. We're all passionate about the future of the industry, so why not get together and talk more about how we can help agents and help people throughout the industry focus on leveraging opportunities in the future and avoid pitfalls. And so that's kind of what came about. Why we're on this call all together is we were together in San Diego, and if anyone wants to elaborate on that, anything I missed.
I'll jump in real quick because I think Grant and I walking into that mastermind thing was a very interesting experience. So actually how it works for those at home, and again, IOA was more than I could have imagined. It was my first time attending. Obviously this time, it was the first conference I had attended as owning my own agency. And I was looking at the industry through a completely different lens, which is probably why I'm here to begin with. But Grant and I were actually kind of chatting about a whole bunch of different stuff. And Matt walks by and grabs us and goes, hey, come with us, or come with me for a second. And we figure we're like gonna go have a beer or something and like chat at like a tabletop. And we get brought into this group of like 25 people. And it was one of my more favorite conversations that I was part of the entire week. Was this very open sharing, and I think that's a special characteristic of that event and of the people that were there, is that they're just so transparent with how they operate their business, their struggles, their successes, and that's a special thing.
Yeah, not only transparent, but they were really wise. I mean, some of the questions that were being asked of me challenged me, and then it made me start thinking twice about the questions that I wanted to ask, which then netted me a amazing return in the conversation because I was being stretched in how I was answering questions, but then the information that people were able to share as they were being stretched as well. It was a blast. It was really great.
And I think, guys, we agreed that there's a lot of wonderful people in the industry with different perspectives, but the four of us share, we're in different parts of the country, in New York, in Boston, in Arizona. Ryan, you have such a crazy story to tell. Your experiences up to this point, taking you around the country, meeting so many people in the industry, sharing a ton of information, content, being the content driver in the country and the industry, dabbling outside the industry, coming back and starting your own agency, Rogue Risk. Like that's an entirely different perspective than what Zach and I have, starting G&N 10 years ago, recently merging, being acquired by the Hill Group, having that experience, starting Babylon, and Grant, your plethora of different businesses within your umbrella, and the ability for you to be successful at integrating them all, which is very uncommon, because a lot of people will see opportunities and start in that direction and then abandon them or fail. And what you've done is successfully put the right people in place and the right systems. And so I think the different perspectives we have on the same industry will really help viewers and listeners just see it from a different light.
And for those at home, I have two comments here before we get into this, because I just can't help myself. One, Albany, New York, and Boston may seem very close together, but they are different parts of the country. I just want to be clear. I think they would agree with that as well. And also, I'm completely emasculated by Zach's water bottle. Every time he takes a sip of it, I feel like less of an adult male. I don't know what it is.
Stay hydrated, Tom Brady, baby.
Well, why don't we start off, guys, by diving in a little bit. So what we're not going to focus on this collab is specific little tools or sales strategies, or like a marketing idea that worked 6 years ago, or failures in the past, and what we're doing right now to change them. Really focused on the future of the industry, how to leverage opportunities moving forward, what to stay aware of, and what to avoid moving forward. How do we take advantage of all the opportunities in the future in the industry to get the best outcome? And I think that's the topic we want to start with today, and that's the theme in general that will be helpful to serve our audiences. I think that we all have different podcasts, we all have different mediums and media that we share specific tactical things or strategies. But I think this collab is really going to be helpful if we focus on bigger picture, visionary leadership and future of the industry.
Let's do it.
So why don't we start off with a topic today being in the next year, there's a lot of changes going on, but what, in your opinion, would it be really important for insurance agents across the country to focus on either implementing, taking advantage of, or changing in the next year at their agency? Anyone want to start off, feel free to.
Yeah, I could start. I think a big word that insurance agents need to focus on is the word efficiency. It's becoming more and more expensive for us to run our businesses, and that's not going away. It actually might become even more expensive as the months and years go on. The cost for overhead, just the cost for buildings and the cost for staff is getting more expensive. But also the cost to purchase different pieces of technology to give consumers the experience they come to expect, that increases things. And then on the other end of the spectrum, our income, a lot of carriers are reducing what they're paying agents. So as a result, that margin is being squeezed. So in order for agents to thrive in the future, they really have to focus in on efficiency. I think that starts with engineering a really great, not only customer journey map, but also engineering a map about what their staff and what their employees are doing on a daily basis, trying to find inefficiencies, trying to find places where they have to repeat things, trying to find ways, sure, to automate, but just be, like I said, more efficient in what they're doing to be able to get more done with less time. Because what was productive for an agent, 5 years ago even, it's not going to be considered good enough production 5 years from now. And if we want to be on the leading edge of that, we have to start thinking about that now rather than reacting in 2, 3, 4, 5 years when margins get squeezed even more.
I like that. I think, going off that for a sec, Grant, I'm reading a book right now called The Messy Middle. Have either of you three read that? Anyone? Anyways. Interesting book, but it kind of, it's messing with my head a little bit. And it's talking a little bit about what you just said. One of the things I've said in the past was that I believe that Matt and I and GNN as a whole have learned from the L's more than the W's. I think that, when you fail, there's a good amount of anger and frustration, but also there's a lot of internal understanding. But the messy middle, what he challenges you to do is actually you should learn way more from your successes than from your failures. And he talks about that failure could happen for a myriad of reasons, so many reasons. And you could spend a ton of time analyzing why you failed as opposed to doubling down on why you're succeeding. So coming all the way back around, why that's grabbing me when you were talking, is I think the insurance industry is incredibly noisy right now about what you could do better. And I think there's a never-ending pursuit of better. I believe in it in a lot of ways, but I think you should only try to get better right now where maybe you're winning. Because there's a lot of noise out there on trying to make your agency perfect experience with every single thing, and there's so many pieces of technology you can use, but does your audience care? Is that a problem that when you're solving, your audience is like, my goodness, I was actually going to leave your agency if you didn't do that, so thank you for doing that? Or are you just solving it because some other agency is specializing in it? So to your point about being efficient, I would add doubling down and being super efficient to where you want to win.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I'm going to take a couple of these just from my standpoint. So rogue risk has officially been a thing for 9 weeks. I'm yet to sell an insurance policy. I could go on for about an hour about just that single statement alone. But to the expensive part, So you want to text, right? That's $100 a month. You want to be able to actually make phone calls out of your office? That's $50 a month. You want your phone call thing to talk to your text thing? That connection's $100 a month. God forbid you want an agency management system. Even the cheapest agency management system exists for a single user is $125 a month. Then you actually want to be able to quote stuff without it going into a single platform. That's $300 a month. Oh, you want to do personal lines too. That's $200 a month. I mean, you haven't even written a policy and you're $1,500 a month in the hole. You haven't hired anybody. You don't even own a space. You're working out of your basement and you're racking $1,500 a month just to get the thing set up so that you can actually sell a policy. And like, I think what's interesting about that is you were talking about the customer journey, right? So I see all these costs laid out. I mean, I could spend on just tools to do customer experience. I can spend $3,000 a month, easy, clean. That's before I add a second user, before I let my bookkeeper into a system. I'm talking $3,000 single user. So then you have to start backing out of that. What does your customer actually need? And I think I'm kind of doubling into your answers, is like we really have to be cognizant of what the particular customer base, not just that we do serve. I think the important part is who we want to serve, right? Because this has been a very tough question for me, is who do I actually want to serve? Because I have the full spectrum. I know every agent that writes in every potential market and every line of business. So if I can go talk to whoever I want, and I'm starting from zero. So I don't have any legacy stuff to deal with. So when you actually start thinking about who do you want to work with, it's a tough question. Who do you want to work with? Big commercial, small commercial, personal lines, benefits. Do you want to blow through non-standard? Do you want it to only be high net worth? Do you want to just work in your local community, all of New York State, all of the Northeast region? Like, I really think we have to think very specifically about one line, figure that line out, be the absolute best at that thing, and then move to the next one. Then develop the next experience. And at least that's how I'm trying to approach it, from both just having the brain space to do it and the bandwidth, considering every new process costs $100. Just assume that. If you want to do something, at minimum it costs $100 a month, just right off the top. And if you can start to frame it that way, I think it helps put in perspective what you should be working on.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that, Ryan. Great points. Knowing yourself, knowing your market, knowing what you want to be the best at needs to be first. But I think going back to the noise, I think we live right now in an amazing time because there's so many opportunities. There's so many ways for us to grow. But because of it, it might be one of the most difficult times to stay focused. Coming back to what you said, Ryan, earlier about why Zack's been a good partner of just a sounding board for you. He's really good at staying focused, and I think that's really hard right now more than ever before. Talking to agency owners in San Diego, listen, everyone has different goals. If you have a fifth generation 1910 started agency with 60 people and you only acquire, you might have different goals. But for most agencies, they're looking to grow. They're looking to grow organically. They need to grow. So I think that from the conversations I had, there's a lot of confusion of what to do, when to do it, how to do it, what should I implement? Because I've got these 19 things that I heard this weekend, or 19 things that I read about daily on this post about what's working for other people. I know I need to do all of it. I'm overwhelmed and it stagnates momentum. So my opinion, and the kind of what I've been sharing, what I share with a number of the agencies out there, was you got to be self-aware and you have to choose one or the other. So if you are not having a problem with lead generation, if you're able to get a crap ton of lead generation coming in the door, then you have the opportunity and the permission to give yourself to focus on systems and people. If you don't have lead generation coming in the door, we should not be overemphasizing and focusing too much on systems and people. Not to say we're going to ignore it, but if you have the best system in the world and you have the best 8 people in the world, but you don't have the ability to drive in opportunities to grow the business, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be employed for very long. So The agencies out there that are doing a good job at creating opportunities, generating a lot of prospects, they have the permission to focus a lot more on systems, people, data, process, technology, implementing new opportunities, which is why I'd argue Grant's been so effective at creating these multi-tiered, legs of his operation, is because he's able to move to the next one without worrying about the leaky bucket on the back end.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you guys are saying is understand who you are and understand where you want to go. And whenever I try to evaluate that, just personally, whether it's at an anniversary trip with my wife or with my business when we're doing annual reviews, I try to answer 4 questions. And that is, what do I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? What do I want to add? And what do I want to remove? And I think people, especially insurance agents and business owners, they don't focus in enough on what do I want to remove and what do I want to do less of. Those 2 things that you're taking away from are really, really important. And that helps with efficiency. That helps with staying focused on where you want to go in the future. And I think those are really, really big deals. You're right, Matt. Like I started Stewardship Mortgage first. I didn't come out the gate with the mortgage company, the insurance agency, the financial planning firm, the investment management firm. It was all systematic. And once I had the mortgage company down pat, what I was a niche at and what I focused in at was creating a great customer experience and loving people through a financial service. Well, okay, if I can do it there, and I've got this one kind of systemized and running well, let's do it again. Okay, now I got that one, then let's do it again. And coming out of the gate with all of them at once would have been unbelievably tough and probably would have failed. So understanding who I was at that time and understanding where I wanted to go did help me better understand those questions of what do I want to do more of, what do I want to do less of, what do I want to add, or what do I want to remove, so that I could be efficient or as efficient as possible before I moved forward.
Yeah, I think to your point, Grant, one of the problems right now in the insurance industry is the same problem with social media. It's that you have a lot of people that are communicating for the very first time at scale. And when you communicate at scale with a lot of people who actually don't share the same core values with you, it's difficult to do the 4th one you just talked about of what do I want to do less of, in that aspect. In the insurance industry, just like on social media and everywhere else, there is not a scarcity of ideas. But there is a scarcity of people to go outside the lines and get something to the finish line. And really kind of work on one shiny object or multiple. You can work on multiple ideas, but they better serve the same purpose. And I think everyone in this phone call, including Matt and I, can really do a much better job of listening, appreciating an idea, and then not just going back to the agency right away and saying, how do I force fit that in? How do I just get that in? Because if you go through that 4-step process you just talked about, Grant, it really might just not fit. You might just become a champion of the person getting it done. And that's the beauty, I think, of social media and of communication, is just celebrating somebody else, understanding that that's working for them, but not necessarily saying this is going to be for me right now.
Yeah, I think one thing just to frame is what are you good at versus what needs to be done for your agency. So, one of the things that I'm struggling with is a natural skill set for me is marketing. And everyone says, oh, well, you're good at marketing, you're going to be fine. And it's like, yeah, except a lot of this work is a lot more than just marketing. So I have to figure out, okay, am I going to double into that skill and then have to, then I have to pack in people behind me who have different skill sets, right? Or do I put that skill aside, outsource that to someone else and work on the things that need to get done from a business owner standpoint? And I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think the problem is we never actually go through that thought experiment and we don't actually backfill ourselves. Like the most expensive cost in my singular monthly cost in Rogue Risk right now is my bookkeeper / accountant tax person. That's on a monthly basis, the thing that I'm spending the most for, if you were to take it on a monthly basis, is that cost. And the reason is, I don't know anything about accounting. I hate bookkeeping. I hate taxes. I don't like setting that stuff up. For me, every ounce of that's in my brain is time wasted. I want to look at a P&L or look at a balance sheet, see what needs to be done or where we're at, and move on with my life. So that was like one of the very first things that I brought in. And too often, I think, that's a me thing. Too often what I see is the same scenario in other agencies is they just want to sell. Okay, if you just want to sell, you need an operations person to make sure or an office manager or a bookkeeper or a marketing person or if you just want to manage the office, you need to have producers underneath you or someone who's driving growth. And I think too often we try to wear all the hats. We never disperse ourselves. We never allow ourselves to backfill into the positions we're not good at. And when we do that, we don't do it tactically. She's 22. She must know the internet. I'm going to let her do all our marketing. Well, that's not really a smart decision. You know what I mean? That's not really thinking about your business in the right way.
Good point. I think I like those 2 questions, Hanley, that you asked, and Grant, the 4 questions that you asked. I think that it ties into 2 things that I saw this weekend. One, I don't know if you guys saw it, but someone actually Ayers made a post about focusing much more around CEO kind of questions and discussions opposed to being the producer or just the marketer or the ops person, but thinking more as the CEO. And I really love that post because I think that that's where our conversations need to go. The other thing that I saw was Tony Robbins. I don't know if you guys saw this, but he shared on either his Instagram or LinkedIn or something, one of his first speeches from 30 years ago about personal power. He said, knowledge isn't power, personal power is the ability to create the future that you want is true power.
Dude, he looks so young. He looks so young in that.
He's so young. He was probably younger than us. He was probably 25, 27, who knows? But it got me thinking because a lot of things we talk about the what, but the how is kind of avoided. And how are the type of discussions, what kind of things do we need to be talking about to be the CEO? But then also, how do we exercise that personal power like a muscle? And I think that as a CEO or as a strategist in general, or being able to create the future you want, there really comes 3 questions that we need to kind of hit on, or 3 steps. And the first is figuring out where you want to go. And I think a lot of agency owners don't really know where they want to go. They don't know what the goals they want to accomplish. They certainly don't have them written down. But that's the first thing. Creating the vision first is necessary. And then the second thing is understanding you need to build a roadmap to get to that vision, right? And that roadmap needs to be clear with different benchmarks, with different timelines and bandwidths, and little mini goals and successes along the way. And then the third step, if you've gotten those 2 down pat, is an accountability on a weekly basis to make sure that you are living that roadmap. And I think that if you have a vision for where you want to go, and agency owners know what their goals are long term, they know what the roadmap looks like to get there, and they have accountability weekly to make sure we're on track to the roadmap, then you're going to create the future you want. And I think we need to be having discussions like that more often than what marketing tool did you just implement last week? Not to ramble on, but Tony got me thinking. Tony in his 30s got me thinking.
Can I ask you guys a question? As a young agency owner, young in the business, one of the things that I think about or just hits my brain most of the time, like when I'm laying down in bed, you finish the day, you lay down in bed, and then all your demons decide that that's when they're going to wake up. And, one of the things that I think about, so I have a plan. I know kind of what I want to be. I'm going to say kind of, because I kind of always believe in my experience has always been that life is often like a Mike Tyson fight, right? Like you have a plan until you get hit in the mouth and then everything starts to change. How much of your day experience is sticking strictly to the plan that you put in place, and how much is just like you're on the motorcycle flying through the city just trying to keep it on two wheels and not wrecking. Like, you know, because I mean, I feel like at one time, like I know I need to get from like the Upper West Side to downtown, but you know, the exact path feels very, very murky to me. And every time I feel like I think I have a path, and this has only been 9 weeks, right? I feel like I have a path, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, that road is closed, bro. Like you need to find a whole nother way to go. And I might have been all the way up to ramming speed at that point. So now, you know what I mean? So I guess I'm just interested, like, has your experience been the same, or is it just plow right through the roadblocks? Like, I'm just interested in that take.
Yeah, I'll dive in. I think that it's important to think back from when we started, not where we are, for Matt and I specifically. Where we are, there are moments where I feel like, well, actually, I've never felt like I'm on a motorcycle because that's not how I live my life. But I'm anti-motorcycle. But that being said, the analogy in the beginning, I think successful companies focus on growth and culture, just in general. When push comes to shove, you focus on growth and culture. And in the beginning, I know Matt and I would take many different paths to get to where we wanted if we focused on growth. Totally fine. Throw a lot of stuff against the wall. Not a super structured planned day. Matt, I mean, fill in if you want, but I don't think the beginning was planned at all. Whereas now, there's objectives I have to get done and an order I have to get them done to make myself feel like I had enough time to work on things that aren't super structured. I think that's the difference where I'm at now versus where I was beginning. Is in the beginning, I didn't focus on culture at all. It was just on growth.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add to that is I think it definitely does depend where you are in the journey, because as Zack said, like if you have a larger team and if you have a different set of goals, a different amount, like the ability to have delegation and accountability throughout your organization, you're going to be focused on different things. You have the ability to focus on 1 or 2 things in a week opposed to 400, which we had to do and what you have to do now, Ryan. But I would say that, like, when you were talking about that, I thought about, you know, if your goal was, I don't know, weight loss or some type of fitness goal, and you hired a nutritionist, you know, you wouldn't, unless you had a crap ton of money to spend, you would probably meet with that nutritionist once a week. You might have a half-hour call or an hour face-to-face, whatever it might be. They wouldn't be with you side by side every single minute of every single day. And throughout the week, you would be focused on whatever your agreements were with that nutritionist. I'm going to eat this amount of food. I'm going to eat this type of food. I'm going to get to the gym and do these types of workouts, whatever it might be. But you might fall off. You might get hit in the face a little bit and start eating the wrong food, or you might skip a day at the gym. But you know what the plan is because you created that with that other person. And then you have that check-in every week to say, hey, are we doing what we said we were going to do? Are we on track to accomplish our goals? And I think that's critical. If you are a solopreneur, you need that person to share that plan and that strategy with, that vision, those goals that you say you have, and then a weekly meeting or discussion or chat to make sure you are on track to do that and accomplish that. And I think that allows you to be punched in the face throughout the week, but know that you've got that accountability partner every single week to meet with.
Yeah, Ryan, I have a different perspective on this. I think that no matter where you're at in the journey of being a business owner, there are always going to be things that are going to be considered keeping the wheels on. It doesn't matter if you just started out and you are just trying to keep the wheels on by getting a sale so you can have some income, or you're 15 years in now and keeping the wheels on sometimes just means dealing with staff or a growth opportunity or whatever that is. There's always going to be stuff that you have to do to just, you feel like I'm in sometimes crisis mode just to keep the wheels on. And I think that's okay. And great business owners have the ability to put their schedule or put their stuff on pause and then attack keeping the wheels on and keeping them on well. But great business owners also are intentional with their schedule and design time to make sure that the train is still moving and the wheels start moving smoother and that there's a little bit momentum going. and intentionally designing and engineering their schedule and time so that they can look ahead of the road to see if there's any roadblocks that they can be like a fullback and move those things out of the way. It's you're never going to arrive to a place, I don't think, of just working on future-minded stuff 100% of the time, just working on, those big picture 30,000-foot view business ideas 100% of the time. There's always going to be times where you got to keep the wheels on, and that's okay. I think, but the activities of what you're doing to keep the wheels on, depending on your role, is what really changes. And the way to kind of continue growing is just intentionally designing time to stop, put things on pause, and think about how you want to develop and evolve.
Yeah. It's been, it definitely has been a struggle for me in the time scheduling. That's something that I actually picked out this weekend as a major pain point in my development thus far. The other pain point is the appointment process takes way too long. But and that's from yes to agency code it's like a month from yes to agency code. It's just a long time for a startup business, but which has been eye-opening to me. So many of these things have been eye-opening to me. But the major pain point that I've looked at and identified over the weekend was the scheduling, and I think in other moments in my life I've had that. Like there were times at Agency Nation where I knew exactly what I was doing and dialed in, and today I'm not dialed in at all. It is very random. It is very choppy, and I'm feeling that pain, definitely. So I think a lot of people struggle with that because you don't want to say no to things. You're just like, oh, let's pick a time to meet. Tuesday at 2, and then Tuesday at 2 comes, and you're like, oh my God, this is the last thing in the world that I want to be doing right now. Like I have so many other priorities. And I do feel like, I feel like a lot of people struggle with that. I know I am right now.
Yeah, and as we talk about the future of our industry, especially as agency owners, I think that's a piece that everybody eventually needs to get a hold of too, right? I mean, I mentioned efficiency to kind of start this program, but how are you being efficient with your own personal time management? How are you being efficient as a leader? Because it's not just the employees and the company that has to get efficient with closing business, but you as a leader, you as a business owner, you have to be efficient as well with all of your activities and what your days, weeks, and months look like. So I think that's a really, really great point, Ryan.
Yeah, I think, Ryan, to echo that, I think one of the things that I use is, would I make that meeting today or not? Like if a meeting came up that I would say 3 o'clock on Wednesday, that means like, what if I had to do 3 o'clock today? Would I do it? And if the answer is yes, I schedule it. If it's no, I don't schedule it. And so that's been a really powerful transition for me for meetings. So to put this in an example, Matt and I were chatting earlier today about someone we have to meet from a business development standpoint. And I know if that person hit me back and said, Zach, hey, can you meet me at 11:30 at the coffee shop today? I would say yes. 100%. And so whenever he decides to schedule it, whether it be in a week from now or a couple days from now, I'm down, 100% down. But we have a company out here, like a restoration company, and they're called ServPro. They're great. They're good people. He's been hitting me up nonstop to try to meet. That's a meeting like at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, where 3 years ago, I would just schedule this. And I'd be like, hey, yeah, come by the office. Jill will set you up with a time. But now I just emailed them this morning saying, hey, bud, like I can't meet with you. I can't find time today. So let's book a 10-minute phone call, XYZ time. And if he says no to that phone call, we're just not going to have a phone call. I know that sounds like super harsh, but that's really helped me a lot in this journey.
You know what I think too, and this is, again, I'm hoping people can relate to this. I'm not trying to make this my therapy session, but I just think they can from talking to people.
That's why we set this up, by the way.
Yeah, I've kind of taken it over as my podcast host brain is just like, whoa, look at these guys. I can ask them questions. I think part of it is too, So like my value to the industry, I think for a long time has been being a connector, right? I connect. That's really what it was. I stopped being an agent so much for a long time, and really it was I connect people. So getting out of that brain space and like feeling like, like turning off, I don't know how to say this. I think it speaks to what we're talking about is like for a long time, my goal was to meet and understand as many people and companies as I could because it allowed me to get a phone call from one of you guys and have you say, hey, do you know anybody that does X? And I go, I know exactly who does X. Let me email intro you. And I learned from Chris Paradiso that the moment someone asks you to intro to you, you don't do it later. You literally, while you're talking to them, text or email that introduction on the spot. And that's what I would do. And anyone who's asked me for a connection to anyone that I have a connection to, that's exactly how I do it. Well, with Rogue, that is not something that's as important anymore. And in truth, that went from like number 1 importance to number 10 importance on my list. And what I'm struggling to do is take it from number 1 and push it down the list. Even though logically, I know, like emotionally and habitually, it's staying up here. And it's a big friction point for me. And the reason I share that is because I think for a lot of agency owners, and I've just heard this through a different context, is like, they know they need to focus on, or want to, let me put it, they know they really want to focus on a certain process, but they've always done it this way over here, or this has always been part of who they were, and pushing that old thing down is very difficult. Do you guys have any, like, outside of maybe like an accountability partner or something, like any suggestions for that? Because I do think it's something that a lot of people struggle with. Don't all be so nice.
Well, Ryan, reframe your question again, because I think
basically when you're realigning your priorities, what is a method or what is the best way to set aside your past priorities or just your past habits? You were talking about working out, your past habits that aren't getting you to that new place that you want to be.
Yeah. I think I'll answer that by dovetailing on what I was planning on saying.
Yeah, just politician me, man. That's a great question. Here's why I think this.
Yeah, thanks for your great question. I'm going to answer what I was going to say anyways. No, it ties in really well, I think. But Zack wasn't being. He was just being humble. He wasn't being. He was being humble. He's always been very good at saying no, or at least not right now if it's not super important. I think. I've learned a lot from him over the years of replacing urgent with important and not allowing the urgency to kind of dominate me and affect my day and focusing on what's most important. But I think to your point, Ryan, and to kind of come back to your question, if we don't know what are the most important goals, at least not even 5-year goals, not 10-year, not even 1 year, just like in the next 90 days, next quarter, what do we need to get done? And if we can't answer that question, then how do we know what to say yes or no to? So having your goals and your priorities written down, what's most important for you in the next 90 days is essential to be able to say no or not right now when a carrier reaches out, marketing rep, when ServPro connects with you, or even when a financial advisor or someone reaches out and says, hey, I want to grab lunch, and you see a great opportunity, but it's not what your goal is this quarter. I think not enough agencies or agency owners are able to say no because they don't know what they should say yes to.
Matt, I was hoping so bad that you were gonna dovetail it and be like, yeah, when I was chatting with Betty in Michigan at a coffee shop, like really politician and like honing it right back around.
Yeah, I'd say just thinking forward to what my ideal week and my ideal month looks like and writing that stuff out. I follow Michael Hyatt a lot. I think he's one of the greater business leaders in the country. He's awesome. And so I follow a lot of his frameworks and his teachings as it pertains to controlling your schedule and deciding what to do and what not to do. And I know that in my week, I'm going to be able to do certain things that are going to have to be for on-stage time, certain things that are going to be backstage time, and certain things that are going to be planning for the future time. So I'm segmenting it out. So if somebody wants to schedule time with me, and I look on that particular day of the week that I've designed my week to do that, if I don't have that time, I say I can't do it, right? I might have the time the day after that, but the day after that, I don't have scheduled for that. That's not how my ideal week is, right? So I have to say no in the discipline. But here's the thing. Most people who do this, they'll create their ideal week or their ideal month. They'll get discouraged if it doesn't get met 100% of the time. My ideal week and my ideal month rarely happens 100% of the time. If I can execute it 70 to 85% of the time, that's a huge win. That's great, because again, there are times where, hey, the wheels are falling off and you got to jump in, whether it be wheels falling off in your own personal life, in your family life, in your work life, whatever is going on, right? So there are times when you have to react to certain things. And it's okay if I look back on my previous week and say, man, I only got 70 to 80% of it executed the exact way that I want. I mean, the reality is this, podcast is not part of my ideal week or my ideal month. This was not scheduled, but I said yes to it because, man, okay, this falls in with my passion and purpose in life. This is an opportunity to love and help others. And I got to find a way to make that work. So this falls out of that ideal week, but it makes sense for me based on my passion and purpose in life. Does that make sense, Brian?
No, it definitely does. And it actually, and I promise, this is the last question I will ask of you guys of this thing, but it speaks to the idea of goals, because you just brought it up, and I just, because we kind of understand, you're maybe, Zach and Matt, you guys could talk about it, but, I've always struggled personally with hard goals, because I'm going to try as hard as I possibly can, regardless of what that goal is. Tell me it's $1 million or it's $10, right? Or whatever the goal is, 1 million widgets or 10 widgets. All I'm going to do is try as hard as I possibly can. So what does the goal matter, right? Like, that's a really bad way. I really struggled with goals in the idea of goals in my life. And I do think as I've moved into this agency and had to start making some decisions around, all the stuff we talked about at the beginning. Do I buy the $3,500 worth of tools or the $350 worth of tools? Goals, meeting, and meeting those goals, it becomes infinitely more important in this particular frame of my life. So, do you set high goals and then just understand that maybe you'll be a little under them and that's okay? So that if you are, you're still above. Like, is it target, stretch, super stretch? Like how do you guys handle that? Because I think there are a lot of, I get the impression there are a lot of people, particularly agency owners and producers like me, who want to have goals, but don't necessarily have a great relationship with them. And maybe that's the best way that I would classify myself. I don't have a great relationship with goals in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could all talk on that. But first off, I believe goals in personal and professional life is so critically important. Think of like, I don't know, if your goal, you're 25 years old, you're trying to buy your first house, and your goal is to try to buy that house in 2 years, and you establish that as your goal, well, then you're going to create a savings plan in accordance with that goal. So I have to save X amount of dollars for the next 24 months, and if I do so, I'll have enough for the down payment. Well, that dictates then your actions and your behaviors throughout each week and each month, and you're not going to be going to the bar as much. You're not going to be spending a ton of money on frivolous things or other activities, and so it really impacts your day-to-day, and it helps you achieve the vision you want, which is like, without that, you might end up saying, hey, I got an extra $2,000 this month, I'm just going to go blow it on yada yada, and that's fine. You're working really hard at the office. And I look at it the same way professionally. I'd say that Zach, myself, and GNN, we accomplish almost every one of our 90-day goals. But we come up so short on accomplishing our 1-year goals. If we have 5 1-year goals, and one's culture, one's finance, one's sales, one's service, whatever it might be, we might only accomplish 3 of the 5. But will we make crazy traction forward? Absolutely. So to your point, I think setting aggressive goals is perfectly fine. If they're outlandish and you don't think they're reachable, then it's not a good idea. But they can be aggressive. The importance is accomplishing your 90-day goals that'll keep you on track to your annual. And if you do that every single quarter, man, success is easy to be had.
Yeah, I think goals need to be risky, but they also need to be attainable. Like you can't be delusional, right? So understanding that they've got to be risky to stretch you is a big deal. And I am 100% on board with what Matt is saying as far as annual and 90-day goals. So much to the point, I don't even write down my annual goals. I know that's not what most people would say, but I just don't do it because life and society moves so fast now that it's basically impossible to act out 100% of those annual goals because things are changing at the speed of light. The 90-day goals, however, I can feel them. I can touch them. You know, as I'm scheduling my day, my week, my month, I can have those 90-day goals in mind. I can have those 90-day goals within reach, and they're a whole lot easier. But I also think it's important to understand there are different types of goals. Sure, there might be goals where there's a project that you're trying to create. Sure, there might be goals where there's a milestone that you're trying to reach. But sometimes the goals are just habit goals. Maybe you have a goal, Ryan, of having a habit to schedule out my week on Sunday every week for the next 90 days. And it's a habit tracker that you just track it and decide, I'm going to do that this time so that the next 90 days it's more of a lived out habit, you know? So I think that, you know, I'm literally, as you guys were saying this, I'm like looking over my goals from the previous quarter, and I mean, some of these things I got done and some of them I didn't. And some of them were like really big things, like launch my book. Then the other ones were things like I wanted to make sure I'm praying over my kids every single night, you know, and some of them are marketing goals and different things as well. It's all over the map. But I did not write one that was outside of 90 days because for me, I can't touch it. I can't feel it. I can't see it. And life is going to change likely. Look, I have visions and dreams for further out the 90 days, of course. But actually having like a goal in place, otherwise it feels a little bit more like you were saying, Ryan, where it's like, well, what am I writing this down for? I'm going to go for it as hard as I can anyways. What's the point, right? But writing it down allows you to take some action steps. So it's not just like, hey, here's my goal. What are my next steps? I wrote the goal down. Now what do I do next? And you start attacking it from there.
I like that. To spin off it, I think, Atomic Habits is a book that we all know and love. And I think one of the, paraphrasing it a little bit, like, it's like more who do you want to, what do you want to be identified as in a year? Not necessarily the goal of a year. You know what I mean by that? So, Ryan, like you could look at when people in my niche in business insurance in Albany, New York, per se, are thinking about rogue risk. What do they want to think about? Like, what does the experience want to come to mind? And then setting like 90-day goals based on that. So for me, one of the things I'm working on this year is I want to be a much more like calm and present leader. Just because I think the leaders I admire are much calmer than I am. And there is a superpower, to wearing your emotions on your sleeve, but it also creates a lot of friction because not everybody like realizes that. So I need to be more calm. So I made 90-day goals based on some of that, which don't necessarily perfectly align with GNN and Babylon, but I know if I'm a lot more calm when I'm at work, it's going to make me a way better person to be around. You see what I mean? So it kind of helps me in that way.
I'm interested in calm. Like if I'm sorry, I can't. You guys can't take me out of podcast mode. It's just too hard. I'm interested in those word calm that you're saying because I hear you. I hear you on people want leaders who react in predictable ways. That I agree with. But I don't necessarily correlate that specifically to calm. So I'm interested in, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm interested in why calm versus say predictable. Yeah.
So I don't look at GNN and Babylon with the word predictable whatsoever. I think that there's, it's okay. We adapt relatively quickly. Where my head's at is like, Matt and I had someone put in their resignation on Friday, which was totally unexpected for us. And in that moment, I realized like when I was driving home, like I wasn't really pissed off. I wasn't like angry to the point that I was combative. And I would say that in 3-4 years ago, if that happened, or 5 years ago when it did happen in a similar role, I felt really different. And because of that, I didn't create an alumni network. And like that person I actually don't have a good relationship with now, and it kind of pains me a little bit. And I think it's my fault, not his fault. I think I really did that. So when I say the word calm, I just mean that, you know, kind of like your Mike Tyson analogy, I'm able to take a punch in the mouth, and I don't necessarily have to punch back in that specific moment. I can actually like take a step, be a little bit more introspective, and then when I punch back in 3 or 4 days, it's going to really hurt.
When you say that, Zach, I kept the word reflective kept coming back, you know, and I think Ryan, whatever word you use to capture the essence of who you're trying to become, it's kind of personal. So I agree. I like the question you asked because I think a lot of people would have that, but you know, having being a patient leader and a reflective leader allows you to not react real quick, and I think that's well said, Zach.
Yeah, I definitely was not questioning your word. I was interested in it because I think we all. The interesting thing about words for me, and I think this is important for all the new content creators out there, and you guys have probably been asked this question quite a bit as well. I have been asked it a surprising number of times recently, is how do you get speaking gigs? How do you do this? How do you build a podcast? And I always answer as honestly as I can, but I think it's important that we understand the power of words. And the fact that words mean, despite their Webster's dictionary definition, mean different things to every single person. It's one thing that I wish our politicians understood, but being that I do not play in that arena nor care to, at least at this time, I think that it's important. I was just interested. I think it's really interesting when someone uses a term that I would use differently. And again, not questioning it at all. I just find it to be interesting. It's an intriguing thing. But I think I love your reasoning, and I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. I think it's tremendous. I think it's tremendous that you're even thinking about it. And like you said, back to Grant's thing, if you hit your goal 70% of the time, you're doing a heck of a lot better than you were 90 days before that. So,
well, it results back from having kids. I think that. A pretty calm parent is something that I strive to be, and I kind of use that word throughout. I think it's perfectly okay to have people in your life where you have a little bit more of the guard down. Matt and I know offline have some pretty fiery conversations about what we're trying to do, and he's partly because he's a redhead and it's just natural. You're attracted to a flame, right?
It's all those CrossFit muscles.
Oh, God, they're everywhere. But I would say that it's okay to be fiery. It's okay to be passionate. It's okay to get emotional, but calm in the moment. Because my default, just to spend an extra second or two on it, is I think as human beings we have a really hard time speaking and listening. Obviously. You kind of default a little bit closer to one than the other. And I think the excellent leaders, such as Matt and other people that I'm around a lot, they are probably 2x a better listener than they are a speaker. And I think that results a lot in kind of like how clear is your head. And so if I'm angry or if I'm emotional, I'm not going to have a clear head, and I'm way more focused on the response. But if I'm calm, like Matt is, I think that I have a way better chance of actually not just focusing on the words that someone is saying, but focus on maybe why or the emotion behind what they're saying, and then I can appropriate the right response.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Hey, Grant, we're a little over an hour now, so we'll wrap this up soon. But question for you, I mean, being involved in so many different sectors within stewardship, you have a ton of different, not only partners, but individuals that have different, personalities and different roles in different businesses, et cetera. I guess how frequent do you make sure that you're connecting with them? And are you using a different communication method with each, or is it pretty consistent throughout?
Yeah, I'd say that is something that's ever evolving. It used to be that I was making sure that I am pursuing them on a quarterly basis where I go out. I don't do quarterly performance reviews. I do quarterly employer reviews where they review me. So I would go out and I pursue them, and they know that this is an opportunity for them to just pick a place to eat where they want to go. And it could be a smoothie or it could be a steak. It doesn't matter. I'm paying. And I just ask them questions about how are they feeling about their job. How are they feeling? Who's somebody in the office that they really appreciate right now? Who's somebody in the office that is a little bit frustrating right now? Where do they feel like they're winning? Where do they feel like they're losing? How can I get better as a boss? What our mission at Stewardship is to love people through finances. Are we really doing that? How can we update that and change that? And really, it's just a meeting where I'm connecting with them and asking questions, and as they answer it, I say, tell me more. Or as they answer it, I say, why? And I try to get more. And really, it's me acting on this kind of one default that I do my best. As a leader, I want to be a visionary, but before that, I want to be a listenary. I want to be someone who listens first, as Zack was saying. And when I'm connecting with people, I'm not connecting with them to lecture them or to tell them something, but to listen well. Now, I also schedule intentional time throughout my week to make sure I'm going through and giving people high fives. If somebody, stayed home for one reason or another because their child was sick or they were on a vacation, I make sure I connect with them to ask them about it. Again, it just has to do with pursuing them. And as far as the personality, I'm always going to be myself, but I strongly believe in adjusting maybe my tone or maybe some of the words that I'm going to use to make sure that they're going to receive it the best way possible. Whether that means communicating in an aggressive way or communicating in a soft way. There's various ends of spectrums. But yeah, I mean, it's happening at least on a quarterly basis. It's happening at least on a daily and weekly basis, but they're all intentional, different types of touch points. And I say that it's evolving because now I'm in the process of developing leaders so that they can then connect with the people. Our team is getting to the size where it's too hard for me to connect with all of them the way that I want to. And that means I have to develop leaders to be extensions of me so that they can connect with those folks. And that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun trying to learn how to do that and to do it well. That's good.
I think one thing you said in San Diego that really resonated was you're constantly evolving as a business owner, entrepreneur, what you're focusing on, and each level that you get to, you have to kind of evolve yourself to become something better and different, and while still maintaining your same self. And you said when you get to the point where you're developing leaders, that's when all right, I've gotten to a pretty good spot, and that's an exciting place to be, and it definitely sounds like that's where you're at. So, and Hanley, I think in future collabs, or maybe the next one, I'd love to hear more. I mean, your perspective with going through the rogue risk process right now and engaging with so many different technology providers, carriers, vendors, while also 5, 6, 7, 8 years of speaking across the country, having so many connections with different markets and carriers. I think there's a lot of questions in the industry about where carrier agency consolidation will occur, who's going to be doing what's the focus of product development in these carriers, how are the right ones going to win, the emphasis on speed and convenience over price, and et cetera, et cetera. I think that you could share a lot of good perspectives. Maybe that's something we kick off next month in the next session.
Yeah. Well, I have thoughts and ideas. I don't know how many of them are accurate or appropriate, but I certainly am willing
That's a good
to share
teaser.
in whatever way you guys are interested.
Good teaser for next time.
Yeah.
Inappropriate Hanley. 1 hour. Book it.
Because I think we could talk for 6 hours. I enjoy every minute. But I'd love to kickstart next month with that topic and let you kind of run with it, think on it a little bit. But I think anyone who's listening should be very vocal with topics they want us to touch on. I think that we're going to listen. We're not going to necessarily discuss and review everything. It's got to fit our theme and our mold of the future and leadership and where the industry's headed in big picture topics. But definitely want to hear from everybody on what they would want us to chat about, topics and strategies, et cetera.
Before we sign off, I just want to say thank you to you three for putting this together. This is wonderful. I mean, I have literally a page. I've finished this notebook, which I didn't realize. So then I started working Post-it notes for everything that you guys were saying. And I'll be selling this as a 3-part ebook that you can buy and consider that financing for Rogue Risk. So I'm just kidding. Kinda, unless you actually want to pay for it. And then I'll sell you something.
Grant has a way to distribute, I know. All right, well,
Awesome.
Appreciate each of you, and thanks for making time, and can't wait for the next conversation.
Thanks, guys.
Be good.